So, good evening. It is Friday, and I've literally hopped on here straight from work because I want to talk about this chromatic cube. Because in my last couple of videos about cube and cube draft, I moaned really because I said the cube was boring, and um, this cube is not boring. They've actually sort of put together a good, not great, a good draft here, which is going to be a lot of fun, because there are some really splashy effects, especially up here in the multicolored area, which make things really quite interesting. Um, but before I sort of hop in and talk about specific cards, I think so. For everybody who's playing this, I think it's we need to be clear of the rules of engagement. So if you look through the white cards, you will note that there is no removal, there is no shatter, there is no doom score, there is no I forgot the name of that new card from Strixhaven. They haven't even put the two sided lands, where the two sided cards with removal on here. There is no removal in white. There are no board clears in white. Sort of AOE area of effect. The only thing they have is they have one side of the adventure, which is Realm Cloaked Giant. They also have Urza's Ruinous Blast, which is really hard to cast. So, you know, anybody who's thinking, I'm going to play a strategy which requires me to wipe the board at some stage and then I'm going to come back, that doesn't exist in this. Um, and sort of to make matters even worse, or better, depending on how you look at things, they've removed the AOE effects from black as well. So there's um, the best you have in black is you have Finale of Eternity, which is a late game card. There is no and extinction event being the only thing in there with an exile effect, and Crux of Fate. But these are late, like at turn 4, at turn 5, two blacks here. This is not easy to cast removal, and there's not a lot of it. Two cards for area of effect. Obviously, in black they've kept some specific removal in, as they've done in white. But there is, again, for people who want go wide strategies, there's nothing to worry about. You could put your things on the board, and eventually you will outnumber them, and eventually you'll overrun them, because there's just isn't anything in red. There's nothing at all. So our favourite deal force smash everything is not here. They will say, well, we've got Shatter Skull in here. Shatter Skull, you need too much mana before it becomes a thing. So there is no turn 4, turn 5, and want to remove everything. You've got Hour of Devastation comes in at 5. That's a long way away. A long way away. Green, there isn't any very much AOE anyway. Looking in the two color cards, looking at the two color cards, again, not much removal, not many board clears. So they've created a format where if your strategy is multiple things, you've got a good chance of landing that strategy. Sorry about that post, man. Amazon delivery, the usual. So there's no removal here. There's some specific removal, but not much. Sort of main removal. There are a couple of unbanned cards in here, and I think that's the next thing to talk about. What is in here? I think up in the multicolored, you would have spotted our favorite or not very favorite Omnath is in here, and that's going to be very difficult to deal with um, once that gets going. Another thing which is in here in the band section, which brought a wry smile to my face, is Escape to the Wilds. So there is some real draw in here, and real great card advantage plays. And the other one, which definitely brought a big smile to my face, was our guy in red, which has been out of everything else, but is here. Fires of Invention. I mean, probably, I don't know, is it better than Omnath? Might be better than Omnath. This is a serious card. This is a serious card. This is a card to fear. Fires of Invention. I'm not sure if Wilderness Reclamation is in here. I didn't actually check. No, I don't think Wilderness Reclamation made it in. No, it doesn't look like Wilderness Reclamation made it in. So there's some cards in here that have come back, which are quite powerful. Um, so the next thing I really want to talk about is, why do I think that this draft is good but not great? So I want to show you what it says in the name of the draft. It says the draft is to make decks splashy, and the colors are to be prepared to draft cards that require more colors, more mana, and more deck building. So they've added in some great multi-colored cards, but what you have to do in order to sort of kick off that sort of gameplay is to remove. I think you have to remove aggro, basically, from the format, or you have to severely neuter aggro and tempo. Now they've done a good job with tempo in that they've got rid of all the cheap counters in blue. But in terms of white, there is still a Throbbing Spectre, there is still a Usher of the Fallen, there is still a Luminarch, there is a Raise the Alarm, there's a Benalia. There are a lot of cheap cards. You could put together a very good white weenie deck and be off to the races if white was open in the draft. And that obviously is a restraining factor on those who want to do a big splashy deck if you could get run over very quickly. I suppose they did a good thing in taking out Skyclaves. That really supercharges some of these types of deck. But I think it is definitely a problem that there are so many good cards at costing between 1 and 3 in white available. Maul is actually still in there. Blimey, what was I talking about? So there is a good white weenie deck in here that's going to run some people over. And the really interesting thing actually is that you can combine that white deck in green, because Stompy is more or less here intact. So you can have a really good deck. Look, you've got the Pelt Collector, you've got the Shambler. Looking a bit further up the curve, you've got your Scavenging Ooze, you've got your Wildborn Preserver. There is a Stompy deck in here. They will say, oh, but we've taken out the mid-range. So they've taken out the really powerful 3 and 4 drops, they will say. And they will say, look, Rishkar is not half as good. You need to sink mana into that. They will say, oh, look, Savala is not very powerful either. You know, they will point to some cards and say, oh, it's not that bad. That's what they will say. But I think sort of with these Stompy decks, especially go wide Stompy decks, in the absence of any board clears, you're still off to the races. And the 5s they put in here and the 6s they put in here are silly. You know, you've got a Naeth in here, which is silly. They've got the Biogenic Ooze. They've got a Cavalier of Thorns. They've got God Eternal Ronus. You've got your Roaring Klex. There is a whole range of things in that middle tier that if you could just get through turns 3 and turn 4, you're still off to the races. So I don't buy the. I mean, especially when you got Llanowar Visionary in here, that gives you the cantrip. So there's a mono green in here, there's a mono white in here. You splash them both together, you might have a bit of a thing going in two colors. You could even splash it with red, because as you can see, our favorite Robber of the Rich is still in here. They will say again, oh, but look, there isn't that much, but you've got the Captain Lannery, you've got the Bone Crusher. At turn 1, they've depowered it a lot. You still got Kendra, which was part of Mono Red. It's not, you know, they are very easy to make single color and two color aggressive decks that could get you off to the races in this format, and that's a worry. They've taken out tempo. I have to say, chapeau to that, but they've left in some monocolor which will act as a barrier to people really expressing themselves further up the curve. You know, if you think about two color and three color decks, you're looking to have all your colors in place by turn 3 at the earliest, turn 4 and turn 5 more likely. So these multiple color decks won't be going off until turn 5. And to have decks that can run them over before that, and these decks can, I think is a bit unfair. And if possible, I want to try and make a mono white definitely, and I'll do a couple of two color aggressive decks just to show that actually getting underneath these splashy decks is pretty easy. I think, and I think that's what's wrong with this draft. They needed to be more aggressive in removing the low end of the colors to create space. Now, funnily enough, they did an interesting thing, or a really interesting thing. And the really interesting thing they did was there are no vehicles. And I know what they're thinking. They're thinking, oh, vehicles. Vehicles are what you use to crew your go wide board, and it's synonymous with aggro. There are a lot of vehicles that never saw play, which are quite curious and interesting. And I don't know. This is like the third draft or so where they've done this, um, where they haven't put in any vehicles for people to have fun with, for those who like vehicles. And I think that is just a loss to the format. It really, really is. Um, in terms of the artifacts, they're pretty bland. Is my view. Hold on, I can hear lots of noise downstairs, so I'm going to hold that for just a second. So, talking about sort of some of the more interesting splashy stuff, and there is some really interesting splashy stuff higher up the curve. Um, I think again they've done well, and there's lots of stuff in here I like, but I am a bit disappointed that, especially in the splashy stuff, that there isn't enough build arounds, and some of them are just great cards. They're the sort of cards you would want to add in multicolor pool color decks. Like a Yorion is just a great card. So they got Yorion, which is just a great blue red card. Luris is a card you just need to remove. This is something that will enable low down to the ground aggro decks in white and black. And I know they will say, well, I've removed all the black little cards, but there's so many white cards that it's still worth running a Luris. So I just think that was a mistake. Um, I feel like they put in this Kaya rather than the other Kaya because it's a newer Kaya. Is this the Kaya you would really want? Um, Especially when you kept all the black exile effects in. Hostage Taker is just a good card. Ashiok Nightmare's Muse is just a good card. Do you really want to encourage people to play rogues? Or merfolks? I don't think so. Um, so this is really, again, curious. I don't know why they did that. Um, so it's good but not great. There are some really good cards. I don't want to go over all the good cards because I think we're just going to discover some of them together. I could just tell you a couple of the having all the Nico Bolas's in really excites me, and it will be quite interesting to see what can happen. Also having Kovold and Aila in, but Aila were lacking some artifacts to really have fun. Um, I'm also, can we do anything with Sir Gwen in this format? It would be good if we could, but I don't think we can. I think there's a brilliant Mizzet Reborn deck in here somewhere, especially if you get to draw this first, as there is probably a good Muldrotha deck and Yorick deck. So these colours here really look really tasty and interesting. I think land is going to be a premium in this format, and what people can do with lands is going to be quite interesting. And I think by having so many different color lands, I think that naturally leans towards Field of the Dead being a really big bomb, especially for those games that run late, especially when you can't wipe a board. So this is really interesting. You will also note that we don't have um, any lands that destroy other lands. So World Tree and Field of the Dead are on there to go off. If they can get them to go off, they go off. So it's really, again, a terrifying aspect of the format. I'm really excited to just get drafting. I didn't want to spend too much time on this vid because I just wanted to give some first reactions, having looked through draft for about an hour and a half now, or 2 hours or so. But I feel like it's going to be good fun. Get those lands, people. It's going to be quite interesting to see how early lands go off the table in the draft to enable strategies. Almost above and beyond sort of creatures and spells. I think lands are going to be sort of in high demand to make strategies work. And knowing what other people around your draft table are going for is going to be really quite key. Um, it's going to be interesting. I'm a bit disappointed with some of the monocolored cards they left in here because I think they're going to uh, make fast and low to the ground strategies really powerful. And I think sort of in my first couple of drafts I might test that. I didn't want to speak for more than 20 minutes, but I think this is pretty cool. I just wanted to really give that endorsement that I think this is pretty cool and we're going to have a lot of fun with this, especially best of three. I think best of three this is going to be awesome. Oh, God, yeah, I've just flashed past another card which is banned. Uro is in this format. So, yeah, let's have fun. I'll be back in about 5-10 minutes to get to go live and get some drafted in because I think this is well worth